Hi, this is Josh Kulp. I'm returning to you after a little bit of a hiatus. We are learning Daf Kaf Bet of Masechet Kiddushin. I am sorry for the delay in this video. If you want some excuses, I have some excuses for you. I was traveling, as many of you know, throughout the United States, talking about the Haggadah. And then, of course, I was celebrating Pesach back here in Israel. But now we're after Pesach. I'm back on track, catching up a little bit on videos, catching up on Daf Shevui. Hakol Beseder, Hakol Yetov, everything will be good. No worries there. So I wanted to talk a little bit in this video about what I detect to be three different types of midrashim that we encounter, again, within this passage, this long passage, about the Eved Ivri, about the Hebrew slave. Midrashim whose purposes are different. So one type of midrash I would categorize is a clarificatory midrash. A midrash who tries to clarify exactly what the Torah is talking about without any really larger agenda. And I would say that this is true of the midrash about where on the ear and where at the lintel, where at the door, the boring takes place. And it basically uses different verses and aspects of different verses trying to clarify exactly how this is done. I don't think there's any other moral message in this. It's just trying to figure out where the boring of the ear of the Hebrew slave who wants to stay with his master takes place. The second is what I might call sort of a moral or ethical issue, and that's sort of reading into the verses that a master who acquires a slave who already has children has a responsibility to feed the slave's children. Because after all, the slave is going to be working for the master. We don't want to leave these slaves without any source of parnasa, of income. And that's a moral message, right? The Torah doesn't really exactly say what the status of these children are, but we can imagine that if their father has been sold into slavery, that their situation was not good. And so the rabbis read into the verses that the master has responsibility, also responsibility to provide sustenance for the slave's wife, should the slave already be married. The third one, I think, is the most interesting one. It's the one that appears in the earlier part of the page, and that's what I would say is the sole purpose of this midrash is to write the law out of existence. We've seen that the rabbis are uncomfortable with the notion of Jews being sold into slavery. They weren't uncomfortable entirely with the whole notion of slavery, but at least with a Jew being sold into slavery, with that they were uncomfortable. So basically they say that things like if the master, if the slave has a wife and sons and the master does not have wife and sons, then the slave can't stay a slave forever. Eino nirtzah, he can't stay a slave forever. Now there's no reason why the master needs to have a wife and sons. There's no moral issue here that we need him to be the same as the slave. There's no real agenda or something reason that we would want the master to have a wife and sons for this kind of particular halacha to take place. The rabbis just want to write it out of existence. Quite simply, they don't want a person staying a slave, at least not forever. They do that also if the slave is ill and the master is not ill. Okay, then this can't him staying a slave in perpetuity cannot occur. So these are examples. We see these in other places too, where the rabbis sort of take a random halacha, add some kind of requirement that doesn't seem to be the simple reading of the Torah, and thereby strongly eliminate the possibility that such a halacha, such a law could actually be enacted, and that expresses their discomfort with the very possibility that such a law exists. And I think that's the case when we talk about a perpetual Hebrew slave. As I said before, they may even been uncomfortable with the whole notion of Hebrew slavery.